Before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Your support keeps us going. Now, let's get into it. The soil was damp between my fingers, clinging like memory. I had been kneeling in the herb bed since early morning, hands deep in earth, pulling out stubborn weeds that refused to die even after days without rain. The rosemary had started blooming again, tiny pale blue blossoms that made everything smell like sharp, clean honesty. Funny how nature never tried to lie. Just grow or die. That's it. No pretending. No sugarcoating. No aesthetics to maintain. The sun filtered through the kitchen window behind me, casting that soft, golden kind of light that makes even pain look like a painting. It hit the side of the counter just as my phone buzzed from where I'd left it, screen up next to the chipped enamel sink. I wiped my hands on the back of my jeans, still streaked with dirt, and reached for it lazily, assuming it was another order update, or maybe a check-in from one of the local clients I supplied herbs to. Instead, it was from Callista, my sister. Hey, just wanted to let you know the guest list is finalized. Had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you. I read it once. Then again. My brain didn't quite connect the dots at first. Tough cuts? I whispered, the words dissolving into the warm hum of the fridge. I stared at the message, heart tightening, breath caught in that space between disbelief and dread. I wasn't her hairstylist. I wasn't the woman she met once at Pilates and then never called back. I was her sister. Her only sister. And somehow I had become a footnote. No warning. No conversation. Just a casual, almost cheerful message sent while I was wrist-deep in dirt. I placed the phone on the counter, screen down this time, as if it had personally slapped me. I stood still, hands sticky with earth, mind racing. It wasn't like I hadn't seen the signs. The breadcrumbs had been dropping for weeks, small, seemingly insignificant signals that whispered louder in hindsight. The bridesmaid email, for one. Subject line. Classy and cohesive, let's glow up Dizzy. The attachment included a PDF of style guidelines, sleek pastels, soft curls, manicured hands, and absolutely no denim, boots, or anything. Country adjacent. She had written that exact phrase. I remember sitting on my porch, rereading that email while wearing a faded Waco Tractor Supply tee, my callous fingers still aching from transplanting lavender all day. Country adjacent wasn't a style for me. It was a state of being. But I still said nothing. I'd laughed at her jokes when she called me farm glam, or made fun of my worn-out boots. I'd swallowed the ache when she said I might dial it down at the rehearsal dinner so her in-laws wouldn't feel thrown. I even offered to bring fresh lavender from my own garden to decorate her tables. Because that's what sisters do. And yet, here I was. Excluded by text. Brushed off with fake warmth and zero warning. The kind of rejection that doesn't shout. It drips. Slow. Soft. Almost polite. Like it wasn't betrayal, just logistics. I thought about calling Mom. But I already knew what she'd say. Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. It's just a wedding. Callista has a lot on her plate. Be the bigger person. That phrase, be the bigger person, had been weaponized in my family for as long as I could remember. Translation. Shut up and absorb the blow for everyone else's comfort. I walked outside again, the phone forgotten. The wind carried the scent of lemon balm and the faint bitterness of marigold. The herbs were thriving. They didn't care about social media aesthetics or curated guest lists. They just existed. Loudly. Without apology. A weed resisted me near the irrigation pipe and I yanked it harder than necessary, its roots snapping like a nerve. That's what I was, wasn't I? A weed. Persistent. Misplaced. An uninvited guest in a garden designed for perfection. The silence of that evening became a blanket too heavy to shake off. The birds had gone quiet. The air hung still. My thoughts kept looping back to moments I thought had meant something. The night she called me sobbing after Jake dumped her and I drove 3 hours just to hold her hand. The time she cracked her tooth on a ring pop and I paid for her emergency dental visit when Mom said she'd learned from the pain. I had been there. Always. Quietly. Consistently. And now, I wasn't even there on paper. Later that night, I sat on my back steps, a warm mug of mint tea in my hands, watching the stars poke holes in the sky. My phone buzzed again, probably another update from her about her bachelorette weekend or a new vendor choice. I didn't check it. I didn't want to see her curated joy. Not after this. My silence wasn't passive. It was preparation. I finally picked it up hours later, curious and foolish in equal measure. What if she realized how that message landed? What if she apologized? Instead, it was a link to her Instagram reel. Wedding mood board drop ring bouquet. With a montage of champagne flutes, beach sunsets, and her laughing in slow motion with a circle of women who clearly weren't me. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just aesthetics. Just branding. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a wedding. It was a launch party. A lifestyle package she had crafted for public consumption. And I didn't fit the brand. I scrolled down to the comments. OMG, you're glowing! Cashin's family is total goals. This is going to be the wedding of the year. No mention of me. Not even in the tags. And I knew for a fact that half those centerpieces in the background were my lavender bundles, harvested, wrapped, and delivered without credit. $40,000. That's how much I'd quietly invested in her dream. Venue deposits. Early floral shipments. The dress seamstress who needed a last-minute rush fee. I'd done it all without fanfare. Because that's what family does. Or so I thought. I placed the phone down, but the silence was different now. Not stunned. Not sad. Solid. Like the earth after a hard freeze. No softness left. Just truth. They didn't forget me. They chose to erase me. That's the thing about erasure. It's never accidental. It's meticulous. Surgical. You remove the parts that clash with your image. And Callista had decided that I, her sister, her history, her helper, was off-brand. I didn't cry that night. I didn't rage. But something inside me cracked with the precision of a hairline fracture, clean, silent, permanent. I began pulling up screenshots. Emails. Bank confirmations. Vendor accounts. Everything I had quietly overseen and paid for. I made a list. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Because if I had been edited out of the picture, I was taking my name, and my money, out of the frame, too. But not yet. I needed the silence first. The space. The precision. That night, I wrote one sentence in my notes app, just one. When they choose the image over the person, they lose both. And I knew, deep in my marrow, that I would never be in the background again. Not quietly, not cheaply, and not ever. Not even if the whole thing burned down without me. Because this time, I wouldn't be the one watering the fire. The silence stretched into days, thick and deliberate. No follow-up. No clarification. Callista didn't call, didn't text, didn't even pretend. I checked my phone far more than I cared to admit, even though I told myself I was over it. Even though I knew the silence was its own answer. But there's something about betrayal that begs for a rebuttal, some last-minute acknowledgement that says, "Wait, this isn't what I meant." I waited for that. And waited. Until one night, standing barefoot in front of the fridge eating leftover peach pie straight from the tin, I opened Instagram again. The glow from the screen felt like a searchlight, spotlighting every part of me I wished I could shut off. I wasn't even thinking about the wedding anymore. At least that's what I told myself. Then there it was, her latest post. A carousel from the bridal shower. All white, all hydrangeas, all filtered joy. "Thank you Cashin's amazing family for sponsoring our dream wedding." The caption read, followed by a dozen tagged vendors and smiling faces. Not one mention of me. Not in the tags, not in the caption, not in the background. As if I had never existed. I stared so long my thumb cramped from holding my phone. I refreshed the post. Nothing changed. Maybe I was tagged in a comment? A throwaway. "Thanks Aylin," tucked in the replies. I scrolled. Nothing. Just fire emojis, hard eyes, and people gushing about how elevated it all looked. "This is goals," someone wrote. "You're glowing." She was glowing, all right. Lit by the warmth of omission. Scrubbed clean of anything inconvenient. Scrubbed clean of me. My heart didn't sink this time. It calcified. I placed the phone down with more control than I felt and leaned against the counter. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the room, buzzing in sync with my pulse. I thought of the nights Callista had curled up against me sobbing, saying she'd never get over Jake. I'd stayed up with her until sunrise, whispering lies like, "You'll be okay," when I wasn't even sure she would. I remembered the time she couldn't pay rent, and our mother said she had to learn responsibility the hard way. I'd driven 6 hours and handed her a rent check without saying a word. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because she was my sister. I didn't need a public thank you. But I also didn't deserve to be deleted. The truth is, I could have handled being cut from the guest list. I would have even survived the coldness of that text. But it was this, the curated image of her life, polished to perfection and free of me, that gutted something deep inside me. My fingers hovered over the phone. Maybe I should call Mom. Maybe she could talk sense into Callista or, at the very least, admit this was messed up. I hit the call icon before I could stop myself. She picked up on the second ring, voice sweet like she just stepped out of a lemon-scented commercial. "Hey sweetheart. Everything okay?" I swallowed. Why didn't Callista mention me in her post? There was a pause. Not long, just long enough to tell me she hadn't expected that question. Oh honey, don't worry about that, she said with a practiced gentleness that made my skin crawl. You know how social media is. It's all just fluff. Don't take it so seriously. My eyes fluttered shut. Mom, I helped pay for the wedding. I know, and we're all so grateful. No, you're not. I cut in. If you were, I wouldn't be scrolling through hundreds of comments about Cashin's amazing family while pretending I don't exist. Her tone changed, sharpening just slightly. You're reading into things too much. You always do this, Aylin. You take things so personally. There it was. That phrase again. Like my feelings were a flaw. Like noticing erasure was the same as inventing drama. I pulled the phone away for a second and stared at it like it might apologize. It didn't. I brought it back to my ear and said cold and clear. I guess I expected too much. We're not ungrateful, Aylin, she insisted, her voice losing its warmth. You're being overly sensitive. And it's not becoming. Not becoming. Like I was a tacky accessory she regretted putting on in public. Like I was a dress that didn't photograph well. I hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that, motionless, barely blinking. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore. It was sterile. Like a waiting room before surgery. I walked to the counter and picked up my phone again, this time opening my banking app. There it was, the scheduled payment for the florist, due in 2 days. My thumb hovered over the cancel payment button. I didn't press it. Not yet. But I wanted to. For the first time, I truly wanted to. Because this wasn't about a wedding anymore. This was about how easily I could be erased and still expected to pay for the ending. And I realized something else too, they weren't just leaving me out. They were testing how far I'd let them go. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, the blades spinning in slow, deliberate circles. My thoughts did the same. I thought of every yes I'd said over the years just to keep the peace. Every time I'd stayed silent so others could be comfortable. I thought of all the holidays spent playing mediator, the times I bought gifts on behalf of the whole family, and never signed my name. And for what? To be left off a tag? To be rebranded as off-brand? A few mornings later, while pouring coffee into my chipped white mug, a memory blindsided me. One of the early wedding planning calls, back when things still felt safe. Callista had been rattling off her Pinterest boards and venue options. I'd been scribbling notes like a damn assistant. And then Mom had chimed in on speakerphone. Aylin, of course you'll be the maid of honor, she'd said like it was obvious. You've always been the one holding us together. I'd laughed. Nervously. Really? Of course, Callista echoed. You're basically the glue. And for a while, I believed that. Believed I had a place in her vision. Believed love was stronger than branding. But that conversation was never mentioned again. Weeks passed. Callista's childhood best friend suddenly took center stage. Then Cashin's cousin. And finally, on her carefully crafted Instagram stories, the official maid of honor was revealed, Cashin's sister Eloise. Polished. Picture perfect. Palm Springs chic. I didn't even get a text. I should have asked. I should have demanded answers. But I didn't want to seem needy. So I waited. Hoping they'd explain. They didn't. Then the universe peeled back the final layer. It was late afternoon. I was outside, pulling weeds along the east side of the house when my phone buzzed. It was Odessa, my cousin and Callista's college friend. She had always tried to play neutral but never hid the fact that she thought Callista could be a little much. Her message read, OMG, I'm so sorry. Meant to send this to Lisa. Please ignore. Below it was a screenshot. I hesitated. But I opened it. It was from their bridal planning thread. Group chat titled, Kay's Big Day Party Popper Ring. Callista's name came first. My sister is sweet but totally off-brand. Can we just keep it tight? Cashin doesn't even want her there. I stared. Off-brand. Like I was a bad font on a designer flyer. Like I was a sticker someone slapped on the wrong bottle. And beneath that? Mom had replied, let's keep it small. No need to explain everything to her. I froze. The words sat on my screen like a bruise. Ugly. Deep. Unavoidable. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't about space or cost. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a plan. I saved the screenshot. Not out of spite. Out of proof. I renamed the folder Truth. Because now I had it. In their words. In their planning. In their own voices. This wasn't accidental. It wasn't me being too sensitive. It was personal. It had always been personal. I wasn't the overreacting sister. I wasn't the insecure one. I wasn't too much. I was invisible. And not by accident. By design. That evening, I sat on the back steps again, phone resting in my lap like a confession. The breeze was cool, but inside me, something had turned to steel. A stillness that comes not from peace, but from resolve. The kind that hums before a wildfire. I think I'm done, I whispered. Not out of rage. Not out of heartbreak. Out of clarity. They didn't want me there. Not the real me. Not the one who cried with Callista after her heartbreak. Not the one who paid the deposit for her venue when she panicked about the deadline. Not the sister who worked 2 extra shifts to help cover her seamstress's rush fee. They wanted the illusion of family. Not the roots. I deleted Odessa's message. Not because I forgave her. But because I didn't need more evidence. I already knew. Later that night, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. I didn't know what I was writing. A letter? A list? A log of every time I said yes and they said, not now? But the words came anyway, pouring out like a wound opening for air. And somewhere between lines I felt it, the shift. The quiet was no longer a waiting room. It was a war room. And I was done waiting for permission to exist. I didn't make a decision that night. Not out loud. Not even to myself. The truth has a funny way of settling in, quiet at first, like a ripple, before it becomes a current you can't resist. By morning, I was already swimming in it. I brewed my coffee slower than usual, watching the cream swirl into the dark liquid like smoke. My hands were steady, but something in me was already moving. Shifting. Clicking into place. I didn't have a plan. I had a truth. And sometimes, that's more dangerous than revenge. It started with a list. Not dramatic. Not spiteful. Just a spreadsheet. A record of everything I had paid for over the past 7 months. I pulled up my email and began searching for keywords. Invoice, deposit, confirmation, wire transfer. Each search produced receipts, contracts, and email threads that began with urgency and ended with appreciation, none of which had ever made it into Callista's Instagram captions. The first entry, venue, $18,000 deposit. That alone made my stomach clench. Second, catering, $7,500. Third, custom dress, $6,200, half of which I'd covered when she said the seamstress wouldn't release it without the final payment. Flowers, $3,800. Photography, bartenders, string quartet for the ceremony, a last-minute wedding planner she said she couldn't live without but had forgotten to budget for. It all stacked up until the total sat at $40,237.84. I stared at the number until it blurred. She hadn't just excluded me from her wedding. She had built her dream on my back. And now she was preparing to walk down the aisle pretending I didn't exist, knowing full well I'd made it all possible. A notification popped up at the top of my screen. Final florist payment scheduled for 48 hours from now. I opened the vendor portal, hovering over the cancel button. I didn't press it. Not yet. This wasn't going to be emotional. I didn't want fire. I wanted precision. I wanted a clean break. I logged into every vendor portal, checking what was under my name, what had my contact info, what was connected to my bank accounts. They hadn't even bothered to transfer ownership. I was still listed as the point of contact for nearly everything. That's the thing about people who take you for granted. They forget you're the one holding the structure until you start pulling the beams away. It would have been so easy to cancel it all right then. 1 click per contract. But I didn't want easy. I wanted control. I wanted them to feel it, not as an explosion, but as a quiet, strategic collapse. Later that day, I drafted an email. No emotions. No venom. Just logistics. Subject line. Change of plans. I addressed it to Callista, Cashin, and Delora, the holy trinity of image maintenance. Inside I wrote, please update your financial records. I've removed myself from all remaining wedding contracts, effective immediately. Any pending payments are your responsibility moving forward. No need for discussion. Just clarity. Aylin. I read it twice. No warmth. No cruelty. Just facts. Then I hit send. The silence that followed was almost laughable. No reply. No protest. No last-minute phone call begging for context. Which told me everything I needed to know. They had already calculated my silence into their plan. They thought I wouldn't pull the trigger. They thought I'd swallow the hurt, as usual, and show up at the edge of the venue like a good ghost, helpful, invisible, loyal. They didn't expect this version of me. I closed my laptop, stood, and walked to the kitchen where my old corkboard still held pin receipts and farm supply coupons. I grabbed the push pins one by one and dropped them in the drawer. Then I printed the spreadsheet. $42,000. 8 tabs. I folded the paper and tucked it into a slim envelope, labeling it debt paid. Because that's what it was now. A payment for clarity. For liberation. That night, I did something I hadn't allowed myself in years. I opened a travel app. I typed in the first location that came to mind, Puerto Rico. Ocean View Suite. Adults only. No group activities. No dress codes. The ticket cost less than the wedding's dessert table. I clicked confirm. And just like that, they lost the one person they should have never underestimated. I started packing that evening, slowly, intentionally. One small suitcase. A few linen dresses. A swimsuit I'd never had time to wear. No mementos. No just-in-case items. If I was going to disappear from their story, I was going to do it on my terms, with peace, not shame. The next day, I received a text from Odessa. No greeting. Just a screenshot. It was a private group message between Callista and Cashin. Cashin. If your sister comes, it reflects badly. It muddies the brand. Callista. Agreed. She's sweet, but she doesn't fit. Delora. Let's keep it small. No need to upset her unnecessarily. Brand. Fit. Small. I stared at the words. Like a badly written press release about a failed product launch. I didn't respond to Odessa. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked to my desk, opened each contract, venue, florist, caterer, photographer. One by one, I terminated them or transferred them. Every signature was mine. Every card on file was mine. I even paused the Instagram ad she'd begged me to fund because exposure is everything. Exposure. She was about to get some. It took me 23 minutes to undo 6 months of blind loyalty. And when I was done, I felt something I hadn't felt since the moment she'd sent that text. Clean. Not petty. Not bitter. Just clean. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the sun dip behind the hills of my property. The rosemary swayed gently in the wind. I took a photo, not of me, not of the view, just the wine glass, sweating in the evening light. Caption. If you want me invisible, I'll make it easy. Then I posted it. No filter. I didn't tag her. I didn't have to. The next morning, I woke up to a missed call from Delora. Then another from Cashin. Then a third from a number I didn't recognize but knew instantly, Callista's new wedding planner. I ignored them all. Odessa sent another text. They think something glitched. Cashin is freaking out. Callista says the venue won't confirm. They're calling it a scheduling error. I replied with one word. Interesting. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Interesting how quickly the narrative fell apart when I stopped holding it up. Later that afternoon, Callista texted me. I noticed a few things are off. Any idea what's going on? Let me know. Love you. I didn't respond. She sent another. Hey, I know we haven't talked much, but I'm getting some weird messages from vendors. Can we chat real quick? Still nothing. Finally, after 5 hours. Why are you doing this? That was the first time she said anything honest. Not polished. Not framed with emojis. Just raw panic. I stared at the message and thought about the years I had spent playing the good sister. The dependable one. The fixer. The background character. She had created a fantasy wedding on the back of my silence, my generosity, my loyalty. And now the dream was leaking at the seams. I didn't respond. That night, I received an email from the venue manager. Subject line. Urgent. Inside it read. Hi Aylin, we've notified Ms. Callista and Mr. Cashin that their reservation has been cancelled due to payment withdrawal. Please confirm if you'd like to forward the cancellation fee to the new cardholder or simply close the account. Thank you again for your business. I replied within minutes. Close the account. No further action needed. That was the end of it. No explosions. No threats. Just closure. 2 days later, I arrived at the airport. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't wear anything that said, "Look at me." I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to disappear, quietly, fully, beautifully. The air in the airport was chilled and still. I moved through it like someone who had finally stopped carrying other people's expectations. No one asked why I was there alone. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. When I reached the lounge, I ordered a mimosa and sat by the window. The clouds outside stretched like new skin across the horizon. My phone buzzed. Odessa. You're not going to believe what just happened. The preview read. I opened it. Voice memo. I hit play. Her voice came through low and breathless. Aylin, your grandma tried to speak up for you this morning. She told Callista it wasn't right. That the wedding felt wrong without you. Callista told her to stop ruining the mood. Then she asked her to step away from the planning altogether. I closed my eyes. Grandma Agatha was the only one who'd ever looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You are enough. You don't need to earn your place here." If they could discard her, there was no line they wouldn't cross. I typed one line to Odessa. "Then I'm doing the right thing." She responded instantly. "You are. Honestly. I wish I could go with you." I smiled. Sad, but honest. I looked up at the screen above me. Boarding was called from my gate. I stood, gathered my bag, and walked toward the jet bridge. No second thoughts. No panic. Just peace. And a single truth burning steady in my chest. They took my silence as surrender. But this wasn't silence. This was war. And I had just made my first move, with one finger. The plane lifted off the tarmac with a soft, trembling hum that vibrated through the seat and into my spine. I leaned my head against the window, eyes fixed on the shrinking city below, each building and highway dissolving into a network of lines that no longer concerned me. I didn't look back. Not even once. By the time we touched down in San Juan, the sunlight had turned gold. The kind of gold that didn't feel forced. Not wedding filter gold, not glow-up gold. Real. Earned. I moved through the airport with a quiet ease, no itinerary in hand, no one to meet me. My suitcase rolled behind me with that satisfying soft clack that only comes when you're truly traveling light. The resort was tucked into the cliffs, wrapped in palm trees and ocean breath. My room overlooked the sea, and when I opened the balcony doors, the wind hit me like a reset button. No lavender centerpieces. No seating charts. No expectations. Just water stretching infinitely outward and a breeze that didn't ask me to tone anything down. I didn't think about the wedding the first day. Not really. I slept late, swam in salt water that clung to my skin like forgiveness, and read 3 chapters of a novel I'd started a year ago and never finished. I ordered pancakes and mango slices and coffee so strong it made my heart race just a little, like I was alive again. And then, as it always does, the past tried to reach me. My phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. I ignored it. Until Odessa's name lit up on the screen. Text message. "You're not going to believe what just happened." I didn't hesitate. I opened it. She'd sent a voice memo. I pressed play. "Aylin, he walked out." My entire body went still. Cashin. During the reception. Behind the scenes. They were arguing, then yelling, then he just left. Left the building. I blinked. "What?" Odessa's voice kept going, rapid, frayed around the edges. The DJ stopped playing for 10 minutes. People were whispering. Your mom tried to keep things going, but it was already unraveling. Uncle Pete yelled at her in front of everyone. Grandma was crying. I leaned back in the lounge chair, phone resting on my stomach, the sky above me bluer than should be legal. I let the information sink in, not like a victory, but like gravity. Cashin had walked out at his own wedding. My first reaction wasn't joy. It was disbelief. The kind that doesn't race forward but sits quietly, blinking, absorbing. My phone buzzed again. "Delora. This is not the time to be petty. Callista needs you." I laughed. Out loud. A small, dry sound that didn't reach my eyes. Another buzz. "Callista. Where are you?" "He won't answer me." "I need you. Please." Then Odessa again. "They're trying to spin this like it's your fault. Saying if you'd been there, maybe he wouldn't have left." There it was. The twist I should have seen coming. I wasn't invited. I was excluded. Scrubbed, erased, deleted. But now that the curated dream had gone up in flames, I was suddenly the missing piece. Suddenly, I was the key to fixing what they had broken. I set the phone down gently, like it might break if I pressed too hard. I stood and walked to the edge of the balcony. The ocean glittered beneath me, unbothered. Unchanged. Waves rolled in like it was any other Tuesday. I picked up my phone again and opened Instagram. Posted a photo, mimosa glass sweating in the sun, ocean in the background. Caption. Cut from the guest list. Somehow still the headline act. No emojis. No filter. Let them screenshot it. Let them spin. Let them burn. The next morning, I woke up early. Sunlight spilled through gauzy curtains, and the air smelled like sea salt and mango skin. I sat up slowly, stretched, and reached for my phone. 32 missed calls. 8 from Delora. 4 from Callista. A few from numbers I didn't recognize, probably vendors, probably damage control. The voicemails came next. Delora, her voice cracking. "She's devastated, Aylin. You're her sister. Please don't let this be how it ends." Callista, softer, broken. "I know I messed everything up. I was scared. I thought it would be easier if you weren't there, but it wasn't. It was worse. He's gone and I need my sister. I closed my eyes. The words didn't move me. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I'd already felt it all. There was nothing left to absorb. I sat on the lounge chair by the balcony and let the sun kiss my skin. Not too much. Not too little. Just enough. And a memory crept in, uninvited, like they always are. Mom sitting with me in the backyard, sipping iced tea, saying, "Of course you'll be her maid of honor. You're the one she always leans on." For a while, I believed that. But then came the edits. The evasions. The polished announcements. The lack of any mention of me. The truth wasn't sudden. It was cumulative. They had phased me out with surgical precision, hoping I'd be too soft to notice until it was too late to do anything. But I wasn't soft anymore. I opened a new message. To Callista. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to protect me. I hope one day you understand. But today, I'm choosing peace. And that means distance." Then to Delora. "You always told me to keep the family together. But sometimes what looks like peace is just silence layered over damage. I'm done covering it." I hit send. Then I blocked them both. Not out of cruelty. Out of necessity. Sometimes healing requires silence. Real silence. Not absence. Intention. Later that evening, I stood at the edge of the infinity pool. The sky was painted in pinks and soft orange, like the world had no idea how ugly people could be. I took a photo. Posted it. No caption. Because this time, I wasn't explaining myself. This time, I wasn't asking to be seen. I was already visible. To me. They could try to twist the story. They could say I overreacted, that I was vindictive, that I ruined the wedding. But the truth was simpler. I didn't ruin anything. They lit the match. All I did was walk away while the fire consumed them. And I didn't look back. Because I was finally somewhere they couldn't reach. The mornings in Puerto Rico had become sacred. Each one began in silence, wrapped in the scent of sea air and warm coffee. I would sit barefoot on the balcony, knees tucked to my chest, holding my chipped white mug in both hands, watching the ocean breathe for me. No alarms. No notifications I didn't ask for. Just the quiet rhythm of being alive without explanation. It had been 5 days since the wedding collapsed. 5 days since Cashin walked out. 5 days since Callista's carefully curated illusion unraveled like a poorly tied ribbon. But the messages hadn't stopped. 32 missed calls. Dozens of voicemails. Group texts. Even an email from someone on Cashin's side, urging me to be reasonable and see the bigger picture. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what it would say. I knew the tone. They wanted grace, the same kind they never extended to me. The first voicemail I actually listened to that morning was from Delora. Her voice cracked halfway through it. "She's devastated, Aylin. Please. You're her sister. This isn't how families handle things." I let the words hover in the air for a second. Then came Callista's voice, quieter and messier. "Please don't abandon me. I know I messed everything up. I was scared. I thought it would be easier if you weren't there, but it wasn't. It was worse. He's gone and I need my sister." I stared out over the water, the horizon blurring slightly as tears threatened the corners of my vision, not because I was moved. Not because I wanted to forgive her. But because I realized in that moment that I didn't feel what I used to feel. Not heartbreak. Not hope. Just tired. The kind of tired that settles in your bones after years of being the net they all fell into. The kind of tired that comes from being everyone's cushion but never the centerpiece. I walked barefoot back into the suite and sat at the desk. The air conditioner hummed softly, a gentle contrast to the storm of desperation gathering in my inbox. I opened a blank message. To Callista. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to protect me. I hope one day you understand. But today, I'm choosing peace. And that means distance." I read it once. I didn't edit it. I didn't water it down. I hit send. Then, slowly and deliberately, I opened my messages and blocked her number. Next, Delora. I had to pause for a moment before writing this one. Because it was more than just a message, it was the end of a role I had played my entire life. The family keeper. The peacemaker. The one who stayed quiet for the sake of the whole. But not anymore. To Delora. "You always told me to keep the family together. But sometimes what looks like keeping peace is just covering up the damage. I'm done covering." Send. Block. Done. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was honest. It was finally mine. Later that day, I received a message from Odessa. She'd been the only person in the family who hadn't tried to rewrite the truth. She wrote, "You okay? I replied with just one word. Clear. Because I was. Clear in a way I had never been. Clear about who I was, what I'd given, and what I would no longer allow. The sun began to dip into the ocean as I changed into a linen dress and wandered down to the resort's infinity pool. The sky looked like it had been painted just for me, pinks, oranges, blues so deep they made me feel small in the best way. I took a photo, but I didn't post it. Some moments weren't for sharing. Some were just for arriving. As I stood at the water's edge, a group of newlyweds posed nearby for a photo. The bride was laughing, genuinely, her veil slightly crooked in the breeze. Her groom whispered something into her ear and she smiled wider. There was no branding in that moment. No coordination. No gloss. Just presence. And for the first time, I felt no resentment. No sting. Just the quiet realization that not every celebration needs to be edited to be beautiful. That not every sister gets to stand next to you at the altar. That not every betrayal needs to be answered with fire. Sometimes, walking away is enough. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the tide crawl up the beach. I thought about every moment that led to this one. Every time I said yes to keep them comfortable. Every deposit, every contract, every silent sacrifice. And then I thought of the image they tried to curate, one without me. One built on a narrative that painted me as off-brand, difficult, dramatic. They'd been so committed to the fantasy, they didn't notice they were building it on scaffolding I had constructed. They thought I wouldn't walk. They thought I needed them more than they needed me. But here I was. Whole. Breathing. And not once had I asked myself how they were doing. Because finally it didn't matter. The next morning, I received a voice message from Callista. I didn't expect it to go through. I thought I'd blocked her everywhere, but she must have used another number. I hesitated. Then I pressed play. I shouldn't have done it that way, she said. Not the text. Not the post. Not any of it. I thought I was protecting myself, or maybe just trying to curate something perfect for the world, but I ended up with nothing. There was a long pause, then a quiet sob. He's really gone. He said I lied about who I was, about who we were. And maybe I did. Maybe I didn't even see it until he said it. I stopped the message. Because none of it mattered. I had already grieved the sister I thought I had. I had already buried the role they expected me to play. This wasn't about him. Or the wedding. Or the guests who would now talk about the bride who got left behind. This was about me. Reclaiming what they had chipped away at for years. I turned my phone off completely. Not silent mode. Not do not disturb. Off. That evening, I attended a bonfire at the beach organized by the resort. A few other solo travelers were there, people who had come to forget, to remember, or to start over. No one asked where I was from. They asked who I was becoming. One man, older, with salt and pepper hair and a laugh like a story, asked, "So what do you do?" I smiled. Not the kind I used to wear, the tight, practiced one. This one was real. Slow. "I'm someone who finally stopped apologizing for being real," I said. He nodded like he understood. No follow-up questions. No curiosity coated in judgment. Just understanding. I watched the fire crackle, the embers rising into the sky like unspoken prayers. I picked up my phone and took a photo, not of my face, not of the fire. Just the glow. Just the light. I opened Instagram one last time. No caption. Just the image. And I posted it. Then I closed the app and deleted it from my home screen. Not out of bitterness. Out of healing. They could keep their story. I was writing a new one. One without an audience I needed to impress. One without a script written by people who only saw my worth when they needed something. One where I was the main character, not the backup. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of waves tapping the shore, soft and steady. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without dreaming of someone else's expectations. Because peace isn't always found in reconciliation. Sometimes it's found in the refusal to return. The sea outside my balcony stretched wide and endless, a steady rhythm against the soft hush of early morning. The air was thick with salt and warmth, but inside I felt weightless. No expectations. No urgency. Just a fragile kind of peace, growing roots in silence. It had been a full week since the wedding imploded. A week since Cashin walked out. A week since Callista's curated life crumbled in front of an audience she had handpicked to applaud her. And still, I hadn't heard from her again. She had gone quiet. Whether from shame, exhaustion, or resignation, I didn't know. And for once, I didn't care. Because I wasn't watching anymore. I wasn't refreshing her profile or scanning hashtags. I wasn't searching for my name in comment sections, hoping for some ghost of acknowledgement. I was gone. Not missing. Gone. That morning, I sat on the balcony with my legs folded under me, sipping coffee from the same white mug I'd carried through years of birthdays, funerals, and family drama. I hadn't opened my inbox since arriving. I hadn't checked voicemails in days. But something about the breeze told me this was the morning to do it. Not out of fear or anticipation, but readiness. I scrolled through dozens of unread texts and ignored most of them. Until I saw Odessa's name. She had sent a photo. A piece of folded, slightly wrinkled yellow paper. Underneath it she wrote, "From Grandma. She asked me to send it to you." I tapped the image. My breath caught in my chest. It was her handwriting. Careful. Soft. Looped the way only older generations wrote. I could hear her voice in the letters, the way she used to say my name like it mattered more than just the sound. I zoomed in and read. "Aylin, you were right to walk. They will learn in your silence what they ignored in your words. But forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. So your soul can rest and keep growing. I see you. I always have. Love. Grandma Agatha." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just sat there, letting the message settle into the deepest corners of me, the ones that still flinched, the ones that still feared maybe I'd gone too far, maybe I was the problem, maybe I was always just too much or not enough. But her words swept all of that away. They didn't come with conditions. They didn't ask me to fix anything. They didn't ask me to come back. They simply said, "I see you." And that was enough. The tears came then. Not loud. Not wild. Just soft, steady, and real. The kind of crying that doesn't beg or plead. The kind that acknowledges truth when it finally arrives and sits beside you, quiet and loyal. Someone had seen me. Someone had always seen me. And suddenly, that made all the difference. I picked up my phone, opened the image again, and saved it under a new folder I created right then and there. Home. Not the family I came from. The one I was building inside myself. Later that afternoon, a notification popped up. "Time to check in for your return flight." I stared at it. I didn't move. Didn't feel panic. Didn't feel obligation. Just stillness. I closed the notification. Then, without hesitation, I opened my travel app and booked another week. Not as an escape. As a decision. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was walking towards something that felt like mine. That evening, I joined a small group of travelers by the fire pit near the beach. The sun was already dipping low, casting gold across the ocean in soft, deliberate streaks. People around me laughed, shared stories about hometowns I'd never visit, heartbreaks I didn't have to solve, and dreams that had nothing to do with image or perfection. No one asked me what I did. They asked, "Who are you becoming?" I smiled, not out of habit, but from truth, and said, "Someone who finally stopped apologizing for being real." It wasn't eloquent. But it was mine. We stayed out long after the fire had turned to embers, passing a bottle of local rum, feet buried in warm sand, talking about nothing and everything. No one here knew Callista. No one had heard of Cashin. No one knew my last name or how many times I'd bailed out the people who said they loved me. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. Later that night, I walked along the shoreline alone, waves tickling my ankles. The moon hung low, round and unapologetic, casting just enough light to guide me without exposing anything I wasn't ready to face. I pulled out my phone and opened my notepad. Typed slowly, deliberately. They erased me. I left them empty. I didn't post it. Not yet. But I saved it. Because I wasn't done writing this new story. But I was done begging them to read it. Back in the room, I lit a candle I had bought from a local vendor in town. The scent of coconut and smoke drifted through the air, grounding me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror. No makeup, wind-tangled hair, skin darker from days of sun. I didn't look polished. I looked alive. I whispered to the woman in the mirror, "You're not going back." And I meant it. Because going back meant shrinking again. Explaining again. Apologizing again. They could tell their version of the story. They could say I abandoned them. That I was dramatic. That I made things about me. Let them. Because their version wasn't mine. And I wasn't responsible for shrinking myself to fit their narrative. The next morning, I sat with my coffee and thought about all the roles I'd played. The silent sister, the backup plan, the financial safety net, the emotional support system nobody thanked out loud. I thought about the weddings, the family photos, the curated captions that never once included my name. And I thought of Grandma. The one who saw me. The one who wrote the only truth that mattered. I picked up my phone one last time. Opened Instagram. Posted a single image, a photo of the bonfire from last night. Glowing, alive, imperfect. No caption. No hashtags. No location tag. Just light. Then I deleted the app. Not out of anger. Out of arrival. Because I wasn't disappearing. I was finally showing up. For me. I sat back, the waves still crashing below, steady and disinterested in whatever chaos waited back on the mainland. And I thought about the bridge they burned. Not in anger. Not in flames. But in slow, careful omissions. They didn't blow it up. They dismantled it piece by piece. What they didn't know was, I wasn't trying to rebuild it. I was planting something new where it used to stand. Something rooted in truth. In boundaries. In value. Not their version of love. Mine. Before I let the day begin, I opened my notes one final time and added a new entry at the top. Bold. All caps. This is the new story. And beneath it, just one line. I didn't disappear. I just finally arrived somewhere I'm valued. The sun rose slow over the sea, and I let it touch my skin without flinching. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fit into their frame. I was building my own. And that was the real beginning. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't come with raised voices or dramatic exits. They arrive in silence, polished, polite, and wrapped in curated smiles. You don't notice them at first, because you've been trained to be the bigger person, to give the benefit of the doubt, to assume the best. You've been taught that family comes first, that love is compromise, that peace is what you maintain even when it costs you everything. But then one day, a single message, perhaps a text, a tone of voice, or the absence of your name in a space you once belonged to, cuts deeper than 1,000 fights. Not because of the cruelty, but because of the clarity. You realize that the image they're trying to build doesn't have room for you, and worse, you realize they've known that for a while. That's the first lesson this story teaches. People can love the idea of you while slowly erasing the reality of who you are. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can shrink. You can bend. You can spend the rest of your life playing a part in their script, editing yourself to fit their comfort, smiling in photos that don't include you in the caption. Or you can leave. You can reclaim your space, your voice, and your worth. Not with a loud explosion, but with quiet, irreversible action. Walking away isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's about understanding that staying would require self-erasure. That being included would come at the price of your dignity. We're taught to be loyal. To stick around. To forgive quickly and communicate always. But what we're not often taught is discernment. The wisdom to know when something isn't just a misunderstanding, but a pattern. When silence is not just an oversight, but a strategy. This story shows that not all exclusion is accidental. Sometimes it's calculated. It's layered in branding, image, and curated narratives. And when you see that clearly, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, is to stop asking for a seat at the table where your presence is treated like an inconvenience. What makes this story powerful is not the revenge. It's not the $40,000 pulled or the contracts cancelled. It's the calm clarity with which the protagonist takes her power back. No screaming. No public shaming. Just a shift in focus, from pleasing others to protecting herself. That's the second lesson. You don't need to destroy others to reclaim yourself. You just need to stop financing your own erasure. Whether with money, time, energy, or silence, many of us pour ourselves into relationships that wouldn't survive if we stopped being the bigger person. And the moment you stop, you see it all. You see who only called you kind because you were quiet. Who only kept you around because you were convenient. And who vanishes when you finally say no. There's grief in letting go, even when the people you walk away from never truly saw you. There's grief in realizing that the love you gave so freely was never reflected back with the same depth. But there's also freedom in it. There's freedom in building a new story, one where your value isn't dependent on being useful, quiet, or palatable. One where peace isn't the reward for endurance, but the foundation for growth. And somewhere along the journey, you realize the power of being untagged. Of being unseen by people who never really looked at you. You stop trying to correct the record, to convince them you were worthy all along. Because the third lesson is this: you are allowed to walk away without a permission slip, a dramatic ending, or a consensus. You are allowed to heal in silence. You are allowed to redefine what family means. You are allowed to say, "This is no longer enough." And step into the version of yourself that no one else clapped for, because she doesn't need applause anymore. She has peace. In the end, it's not about weddings or Instagram posts or who's in the photo. It's about something far deeper. It's about what happens when you finally believe that your presence is not negotiable. That your love, support, and energy are not bottomless wells for others to draw from without gratitude. It's about what happens when you stop mistaking being needed for being valued. And it's about choosing wholeness over loyalty to dysfunction. The final image in this story isn't revenge. It's not vindication. It's a woman sitting by the sea, phone off, wine in hand, knowing she burned no bridges. She just stopped crossing ones that led nowhere. She didn't disappear. She arrived. Fully. Finally. And she didn't do it with applause. She did it with a whisper. I'm done explaining myself. So if you see yourself in her, if you've ever been quietly excluded, gently erased, or kept around only as long as you didn't disturb the peace they created, take this story as permission. Not to rage. Not to beg. But to release. To untether yourself from stories that no longer fit. And to remember this. You don't have to burn the bridge. You just have to stop walking toward people who never built one back. That's the real peace. And it begins the moment you decide you're no longer asking to be seen. You're choosing to live fully, whether they look or not.